Okay, here we go on event-driven programming, video number 2. So I created a new project, I created a form, and I used my toolbox to add a button, which I added here, and then I added a text box. I scroll down to T, ST, and I added 2 text boxes, one text box here, another text box here. I added a label here. One thing about the text box is that on the text box I can make it multi-line or not. So this one's multi-line and this one is not. And then I went over to properties, and for my properties I set the text of this, actually let me set the text of label to name because I'm going to enter the name. I'm just using this as label so I don't need to worry so much about the name because I'm not going to be manipulating this data. But with the others I have txt, this is a naming convention, and I'm going to call it txt display, so this must be named txt display, and this one's txt input, and this is the button btn add. And also if I do this, you can see I have form 1, button add, label 1, txt display, and txt input. So I'm going to start coding now, and I can do this by, I think there's a button here, no, let me close this. I can do this by double clicking on the add button because I'm going to add some code to that, and that automatically creates this section here, the event handler. I should probably show you that even if I didn't have this, if I delete that event handler, and in fact if I close this one down, if I look at my Solution Explorer, then I have my properties, what am I looking for, view code. If view code comes up and it shows this, and you can see there's nothing in it. Another way to get the event is to look at my form, and I want my form events, and one of my form events is down here, and it will be load. Press L, it'll take me down to L, and there's form load, and that's another way to do it. So I can either double click on this or I can do it like that. Same thing with the button. When I click the button, I want a button event, and there's a button event handler. I could also have gone to button, selected that, and from here I can select button events. That's how to get to events. So I'm in here now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself, okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a variable, and it's going to be an array. I'm going to call it pupil name, and give it a maximum length, and I'm also going to give myself a count because I'm going to count the number of clicks. So count as integer, and I'll initialize it, I'll assign the value 0 to begin with, and on button click what I'll do is I'll take pupil name and I'll feed it count, and then I will assign the value of my text input box. So txt, there's my input box here, and its property text, that's property text is whatever anyone types in. So whatever anyone types into text box, its value, text value, is going to be fed into pupil name count. And I'm going to do that, and let's run it, see what happens. Oh no, we need to have some kind of output. Let's have MSG box, and we'll say what the we'll say what the name is. Name, and then we need to concatenate that with the pupil name, and I'll feed counts in here so that we can increment that, and let's see what happens. And we run this, and it tells us what our name is. That was form load. I didn't want form load. I put it in the wrong event. Okay, let's close that, and I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to put it in here. In fact, I don't want to put anything in the form load event, so I can just get rid of the form load event. I want the button click event. Let's try it again, and we'll see what happens. And now we have add. I'll put a name in here, Joe. We're going to add it, and it displays the name Joe. Now we'll have Mary, and it'll display the name Mary. Now everything looks like it's working okay, but is it really? So let's have a look here and just print out. Let's do ampersand, ampersand, and let's look at the count value. Count value is ampersand count. Let's see what's happening here. And we'll run the project. And so we have name A, add count value 0, that's fine, that's where our array starts. B, count value 0. So you see we've forgotten to increment that. So what we need to do is, if we're going to have count go up for our array, we need to say count, send the value count plus 1. Now let's have a look at this. And let's put a space in here. Where do I need a space? I need a space before that. A couple spaces. And we'll run this. There's A, name is A, count is 0, name is B, counts 1. Okay, so they're going into different elements in the array, so as the index goes up, it's storing my different names. Now let's work on display. Actually, before we work on display, we're going to tidy this up, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down here after end sub, and we're just going to create a procedure, add pupil, and we're going to pass it by value count. Is this running? Why is that coming up? Of course, I haven't written sub add pupil. We're going to pass it by val c as integer, and in here we're just going to take the adding pupil code and the displaying it in the message box, and we're going to run it. And what will happen when we run it? We run this, everything runs okay, I put my name in, I do add, and nothing happens, because though I've created my procedure, I need to call the procedure. Now what happens here, I call the procedure add pupil, I pass it count, and we run it, and when I run it I type in A, and all appears to be well, except that the count value is 1 too many, because we have to start counting at 0. So what that means is we have to add the pupil before we increment count. So these little things are easy to overlook, but they're important. So now when we run it and we add the first name A, we see that we start counting at 0. That's the first index, name A, and that's appropriate. Okay, so now we can move on to a better form of displaying. Rather than just using message box, we're going to display this in the text box, the multi-line text box. Okay, let's add a new subroutine. So I come down here and I say sub display. I'm not passing any parameters, so I'm going to loop. I'm going to say for I, assign the value of 0, I initialize I to 0, to pupil name dot length -1. You should be familiar with that by now. And then I'm going to say txt display. This is my other text box, the multi-line one. And I'm going to use something called append text, and I'm going to pass that pupil name. Oops, not Paddington Converter. I don't even know what that is. Pupil name I, and then I'm going to add VB new line so that it moves down a line. And when we run this, what's going to happen with display? When I click the button, there's my name, count value is fine, nothing displays. Why is it not displaying? Because I haven't called the function or the routine, the procedure, subroutine. I've create it, but I haven't called it, so under my button click I'm going to call it here. So display. And let's run this. Now that I've got display, we'll run it and let's see if it works. So there's my name. My name's here on count value A. That's working well. So let's try W as my next name. W's on the next one. So it's working. Let's try D. And D should be in there. Okay, it's working, but it's doing something strange. We have A, we've got a bunch of space, and W and D. How are we going to get that to go away? So what we can do is, if you think about it, we need to, let's try adding txt display dot, is there a clear? Yes, there is a clear. And let's try that. And what that's going to do is going to add A. A is added. Now we're going to add B, and it's going to add B, and it's going to clear the last one from the text box. Now we're going to add V, and it's adding V, so we just see the current records. So that's fine. So work through that that tutorial, and you'll start getting the idea of how event-driven programming works. Thank you very much.